Imagine a world, one where you're not living paycheck to paycheck, where social media doesn't bombard you with ads about the newest clothes, the newest phone, or the newest meal prep brand. Imagine a life where there's no pressure to consume, no keeping up with the Joneses, no need to go deep into credit card debt to lead a comfortable and ecologically sound life. A world where work is not a chore, but a passion. Where a zero-carbon life is a comfortable and fulfilling life. Compared to the world we live in right now, this sounds like a utopia. But today we'll reveal that that world is possible. We can and must build that future. A future where we break free from consumerism and ultimately capitalism. Here's how and why we need to do it. The world lives in a wash of products. Everything from Apple to boutique brands plaster every available surface with advertising.
We're out of Pringles. He fired up the Ram RHO for a little joyride.
We'll do 2 Michelob Ultras.
Get a poppy. Get a poppy.
Get a poppy.
And we, in turn, respond. The siren songs of marketing play at our desires. We buy to feel happy, we buy to feel less stressed, we buy to feel loved, to feel community, to feel worthy, to numb the pain. All of this consumption pouring out of imperial core countries and now quickly seeping into the imperial periphery has meant immense material waste, extraction, and emissions. Single-use items and fast fashion pile up in landfills every year around the world, growing the already massive 2 billion tons of solid waste we already create annually. As waste accumulates, we delve deeper and mine harder to create all of those products. Mineral extraction rates have exploded since 1960, plastic production has accelerated, and energy consumption has also increased globally. And with all of this extraction and production has come exploitation, as workers in places like Kolwezi in the Democratic Republic of Congo are forced into mines and toxic working conditions to extract precious metals like cobalt needed for the endless gadgets the rest of the world supposedly needs. To add insult to injury, all of these products are leading to a seemingly unstoppable rise in greenhouse gas emissions. Since 1990, global annual emissions have almost doubled. These heat-trapping gases mean the world is heating up much faster than many climate scientists predicted. Indeed, we're on track for 2.7 to 3.2 degrees Celsius of warming, which would be catastrophic in so many ways. In short, behind the comfort and consumption of some lies the immiseration of millions and the degradation of our biosphere, our very capacity to live. But as we'll soon see, despite the crushing crowds at Black Friday events, despite the mountains of Amazon packages piled at suburban doorways, and despite the mountains of waste from fast fashion hauls and new tech, consumerism is not the problem. Those Black Friday crowds, those Amazon packages are spurred on by corporations hoping to offload their useless goods onto us, the consumer. Because to stay competitive and ultimately to make more profit and accumulate more capital, companies must sell more commodities. In extremely simplistic terms, the more corporations can produce for the least amount of money and then sell all of that product for a profit margin that outcompetes their adversaries, the better they do. But to sell all that crap they produce, capitalists need to generate among the masses what Marxist philosopher Herbert Marcuse calls false needs. Producers need to make us believe that their product is a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. And they do that primarily through marketing.
Sign up to be a member if you want free ship.
I absolutely love my Glide Step Skechers slip-ins.
It's fresh pat. Real meat, real veggies from my boy Junior.
Companies like Apple, Amazon, or H&M assign emotional value and meaning to objects whose actual value stems from the labor and costs needed to make that product. This process not only obscures exploitative practices employed during production, but also allows companies to set higher prices because the commodity is now imbued with certain politics and values. So the range of brands and products on the shelves might make you feel like you have the freedom to buy better, but in reality, you are only served clothes, gadgets, or phones that generate profit or allow corporations to stay competitive. Factors that are often determined by labor costs, raw materials, and transportation logistics, much more than consumer demand. The problem then is not the masses consuming. The problem is the producers, the owners of capitalist production, but more specifically, capitalism itself. An economic system that relentlessly pushes the owners of production to try to sell as many of their goods to the masses in order to make the most profit and continue the endless accumulation of capital. As we will see later in the video, changing our lifestyles or consuming better is a Sisyphean task. Consumerism needs to be seen as a symptom of the relentless churn of capital accumulation, because capitalists goad us into using our hard-earned money on waste, and in turn, we berate ourselves for not doing better in a broken system, when in reality, the larger system is to blame. We feel disconnected, lonely, numb, stressed, anxious, fearful. We live in a world of uncertainties, where fossil fascism is on the rise, where climate shocks loom larger with each passing year. It would be easy to say that overconsumption stems from savvy marketing tactics, nudging us with emotional cues and imagery of what our life could be like, and just leave it at that. But it's not that simple. One of the deeper questions to ask concerning consumerism is, why are we so numb, anxious, stressed, and disconnected in the first place? The answer, at least in part, can be found in capitalist alienation. I covered alienation much more thoroughly in another video I made on consumption, but in short, capitalism relies on a system of private ownership and socialized production. In other words, individual capitalists own the factories, tools, and the means of production, but in order to actually make stuff, those capitalist owners rely on a mass of workers who must sell their labor for money to live. As a result of this system, the worker does not own the product they create. There's no purpose to the work for the laborer except to put food on their table by selling their labor. So not only is the product the worker toils over all day not theirs, but they are forced into selling their labor to capitalists in order to live. All this tireless and unfulfilling work makes us easy targets for marketing. We seek to fill the void of meaningless work and unfulfilling creation with seemingly meaningful products, especially if we're spammed with ads every 30 seconds while scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. Yet consumption never quite brings us that fulfillment we crave, especially as capitalism also alienates us from our communities, pushing us into urban sprawl, cars, cubicles, while gathering spaces and groups disappear. A culture of individualism and siloed living is a perfect environment to sell us more products and generate more profit, but terrible for the environment and our well-being. Ultimately, we live under a mode of production built to satisfy the needs of a few capitalists. And those needs, alongside the structure of capitalism running on fossil fuels, are directly antagonistic to the needs of all people and the planet. Put another way by organizers from the group Climate Vanguard, the imperatives of capital, profit maximization and accumulation are in direct contrast with the people's interests, material needs, and social aspirations. So it's not enough to just stop consuming or to break free from consumerism and the environmental destruction that comes with it. We need to break free from capitalism itself. Luckily, within the contradictions of capitalism lie the kernels for a path forward. The conflict between the needs of capitalism and the needs of the people is fertile ground for revolution. Or as Climate Vanguard again explains, much like gravity compels an apple to fall, this class antagonism breeds grassroots resistance. And building the power of that grassroots resistance, not buying better or less, is how we will escape consumerism and ultimately capitalism. Trapped within the sphere of capitalism, it often feels like the only solution to the horrors of overconsumption and overproduction is just to buy better or less, to quote-unquote vote with your dollar. An idea that links very tightly with the libertarian philosophy of consumer sovereignty, which I covered extensively in this video about the trap of ethical consumerism. Essentially, the idea is that in a market system, consumers will make rational choices based on their best interests. And in turn, producers will respond to that demand and make more ethical products. The myth of voting with your dollar is so powerful because it feels correct. Unfortunately, as we've already seen, our system of production is controlled by the choices of the owners of production. They generate and fan the flames of false needs among the masses. Yes, decreasing and shifting consumption on a mass scale might change the way capitalism looks, but it does not address the foundational rot of the system. As environmental sociologist Alan Schneiberg writes, consumption cannot be the leading factor in the expansion of production. Increased consumption may permit expanded production, but it does not generally cause it. On top of this, as eco-Marxist philosopher Ian Angus writes, the theory of consumer sovereignty depends on the assumption that consumers know everything relevant about products, prices, etc., and so can make informed and rational buying decisions. But we live in an irrational economic system and are unable to make rational choices. Whether it's highly misleading food labels like cage-free, grass-fed, or free-range, or greenwashed fast fashion, the actual exploitation and ecological destruction of production is so shrouded in false claims, which means that even if we wanted to, we can't actually make the quote-unquote rational or ethical choice. So we need to break free from the distraction of buying better or buying less. And no, I don't mean start revving up your fossil fuel guzzling car and buy whatever you want. The luxury consumption of the capitalist class and the rich needs to end. And even in your own life, it doesn't hurt to keep trying to live your values through your buying habits and lifestyle choices. But it's crucial to keep in mind that those actions will never be enough to create the system change we need. Indeed, at their worst, consumer-side ecological tactics limit our imagination about what is possible, which is part of the agenda of the oppressor. As Ashley C. Ford writes, the goal of oppressors is to limit your imagination about what is possible without them, so you might never imagine more for yourself and the world you live in. Consumer-side environmental actions have siloed and dispersed the mass ecological movement for decades, as we eschewed marching on the streets and blocking pipelines for recycling better and buying ethical. Indeed, as eco-anarchist Murray Bookchin writes, this privatization of the environmental crisis, like New Age cults that focus on personal problems rather than on social dislocations, has reduced many environmental movements to utter ineffectiveness and threatens to diminish their credibility with the public. If simple living and militant recycling are the main solutions to the environmental crisis, the crisis will certainly continue and intensify. In short, if we attempt to tackle consumerism alone, we will fail. Buying better or buying less can be costly, uncomfortable, and ostracizing endeavors in a capitalist world, urging all of us to do the exact opposite. And often all that struggle and hardship does little to move the needle. So if we know that alienation, overproduction, rampant consumerism, exploitation, and extraction are all inherent to our current stage of capitalism, then tinkering around the edges is not the answer. To truly break free from consumerism, we need to break free from capitalism. And we can only do that collectively, building power from the ground up towards eco-socialism.